Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video I'm going to do some writing feedback. We have an IELTS writing task 1. This one is from a candidate who did a paid speaking test, a private speaking test with me not so long ago. The candidate's really hoping for this band 9, right? And the candidate is very, very close to it. The candidate's taken the real IELTS test like many times and is around that like 8.5, 8.5 with the speaking. It's like 8.5 with the writing. It's 8.5. And yeah, so the purpose of this video is just to show so the candidate can see exactly why the writing is not a 9. Now, there is a difference between understanding why a piece of writing isn't a 9 and then getting the 9, right? Some people have a ceiling that they'll never, hit that 9. Some people have a ceiling at like 5.56. They just can't get higher than that. It happens. Some people have a natural language learning ceiling. I do think that everyone can get to the C2 level. Depends on how much they want it and how much time they have to spare. Sure. For other people, they can do it faster. Some people can't. So I don't know if this video isn't enough by itself to make sure to guarantee that the candidate will get a band 9, but at least it should give the candidate some food for thought. It should give the candidate some ideas to see where perhaps he's going wrong. Now, just because there might be one or two small weaknesses in this writing doesn't mean he's going wrong in the same place every time, right? Sometimes you might go wrong in task achievement, other times you might go wrong in coherence and cohesion. So just because just because there might be a particular weakness in this piece of writing doesn't mean that that's universal across all parts. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I haven't looked at this writing yet. I've only copied and pasted it, so I don't know what the candidate has. I don't know what the candidate's weaknesses will be. But I certainly expect a very, very strong piece of writing, but something not quite at the 9. But let's take a look at this task first of all. So the pie charts give information about the qualifications of staff in an advertising company in 1990 and 2010. So we get 2 years. Cool. As always, summarize the information. So you always have to select and report the main features, making comparisons where relevant. Not all IELTS writing task 1s will let you make comparisons. If it's a process diagram, you might not have to make any comparisons. But this one, certainly we have 2 years, 1990, 2010. There's plenty of opportunity to make comparisons in this. Sometimes people use dynamic language, like changes over time, like increased or decreased or stayed the same. Dynamic language could be used because we're going from 1990 to 2010, going forward in time over a 20-year period. However, I think comparative language is probably, instead of saying the number increased, I would rather say the number was higher in that year. Yeah. So, um, thinking a little bit, whenever I have an IELTS writing task 1, the first thing I do when I look at the infographics, after consuming the information, I try to split it into 2 main key features because I know I have 2 body paragraphs and I want to think immediately about structure. What are the key takeaways? What are the main bits of information? How can I break this into 2 different things? The simplest way, I guess, is to speak about 1990 first, and then in body paragraph 2 talk about 2010, and in that second body paragraph I can talk about numbers that are higher, numbers that are lower. That's one way of approaching it. I just want to take a look at this infographic just to see what we're dealing with here and just to see if anything stands out. Okay, I see that number has stayed the same, 29% and 29%. There's a huge increase here, isn't there, from 12%. I'm using dynamic language now, from 12% to 30%. So that number is significantly higher. Good comparative language. That number of employees with a PhD in science is significantly higher in 2010. Do we get anything that's significantly lower Yeah, we do. So this one, first degree in art, that number is significantly lower in 2010. So we get one like boom PhD in science and one like big change in the negative. Those were the master in art. So I might break it up that way. Big changes and small changes. And so in body paragraph 1, I talk about the most meaningful changes. And then in body paragraph 2, I'll talk about, the less dramatic changes. Could we say, I could guess we could say 20% and 11%. That's also, a fairly different number. 20% is double almost of 11%. 23% and 21 almost the same. 29 and 29 almost the same. So yeah, 5% and 2%, even though it's double, the numbers are small, so it's almost the same. They're both insignificant numbers. So I'd probably split it that way. If I was doing the task, I'd have one body paragraph about big changes and one body paragraph about smaller changes. And another way, I guess you could split it is numbers or sections where the number was higher in 2010. So let's just use a highlighter. That number is higher in 2010. That number is higher in 2010. That number is higher in 2010. And then sections, we could have one body paragraph where the number is lower in 2010. That's this one, and then 29% stays the same. So you can put that one wherever you want. But yeah, many different ways of breaking it down into two manageable parts, but certainly we want that breakdown. And in the overview, we want to present how we're going to break it into two parts. And then in the body paragraph, we're going to give details, including statistical data. So let's have a look at what the candidate has first of all. Just want to check that there are 4 paragraphs. There is a 3-paragraph approach that's possible. Yeah, so we get this, 4 paragraphs. One thing that immediately stands out, or 2 things that immediately stand out. First of all, you have 247 words. Now, there's usually a Glynn rule that I don't check work. I don't check IELTS writing task ones that are more than 200 words. I'm checking this one because I agreed to do it as a favor. But the first thing I would say to this candidate is, why are you writing 247 words? Now, can you get a band 9 writing 247 words? Yes. Is it a good thing to write 247 words? In my opinion, no. There are a variety of reasons. I made a whole video about why you shouldn't overwrite. Check that video out. But in short, no, in short, yeah, it says write at least 150 words. We don't want to write 75% more than that. 247 words is too many. So if you're writing 247 words, the first thing that you need to improve on is writing in a more concise way, getting your message across. You can get a band 9 writing 150 words. It's not easy. For me, 180 is the golden zone, but more than 200 words, definitely don't need it. So yeah, there's more that can go wrong when you write more than too many words, but I'm not going to go into all of the reasons right now. I've made a whole video on it. 247 words is too many, in my opinion. Also, why is the overview the longest paragraph? That's so strange that the overview is the longest paragraph. The body paragraph should be the longest ones. So we want a quick, short introduction, which is fine. Then we want a quick, short overview with, just 2 or 3 sentences. Then we want to go into the detail. So the overview feels a little bit long, or it just looks a little bit long. But let's actually read the thing and see what we have here. Okay, so the pie charts provide a breakdown of the proportions of employee. The pie charts provide, fine, a breakdown of the proportions. I don't think we need this of the proportions. The pie charts provide a breakdown of employees in terms of their qualifications, because we have this in terms of their qualifications, a breakdown of the proportions of employees. To me, that's not easy to read. And as you might well know, for coherence and cohesion, to get that band 9, the message can be followed effortlessly. And already I'm thinking, well, that's not effortless. I have to reread that to make sense of it. So yeah, getting a band 9 is tough. But okay. In one advertising company during 1990 and 2010, during is okay here. I prefer in. I don't see the need for during. I feel like many L2 users of English overuse this word during, and in most cases it just sounds a bit odd. I'd recommend just forgetting about the word during. Um, just in 1990 and 2010 is fine, or if you want to paraphrase, say in one advertising company in 2 periods, 1990 and 2010, something like this. But okay. Introduction, absolutely fine, apart from, very minor issues. Okay, let's have a look at the overview. Overall, good signpost. While the percentage of workers with a PhD in science or art and those with a master's degree in art followed a positive trajectory. So I don't like terms like this, a positive trajectory. They make me stop as a reader and I have to think, well, what do you mean? We have 2 pie charts here. What does it mean to follow a positive trajectory when we're looking at 2 static pie charts? So yeah, that's a problem. The reverse was true for personnel, okay, with a first degree in science and art. Okay, so I guess that's our key feature 1. I wouldn't say that I could follow that effortlessly, but looking at the pictures and following it, okay. In addition, workers qualified, I don't know about this, to be qualified. These workers are qualified with a master's. Workers qualified with, just take it out. Workers with a master's in science consistently accounted for large proportions. What does that mean? Workers with a master's in science consistently. When you have 2 pie charts, you can't really measure consistency. You have 2 snapshots. If it was a line graph and it was a flat line, then you can say there's consistency. We don't know that. The number might have dropped in 1995. The number might have skyrocketed in 2000. We don't see the trajectory. We don't see over time all of the different points. We see 2 things, 1990 and 2010. So we can't really say that there's consistency there. We can say that the number was the same in 1990 and 2010, but we don't know if it stayed the same throughout, in the 20 years. Because it might have gone, like this, and ended up in the same place. We don't know that. So don't comment on information that we don't have. Counted for large proportions feels a bit odd. Comma, despite experiencing no... that's not a despite. There's no contrast here. So that's, despite experiencing, that would be like a surprise. There's no reason for despite here. You could just take it out. Consistently accounted for large proportions, experiencing no change in figures. Again, experience. Okay, fine. Okay, so now we're gonna get a third. Are we gonna get a third key feature? Of particular note are specialists with a PhD in science, who underwent the most substantial growth. So again, the candidate's using dynamic language, which is not... I mean, I wouldn't say it's wrong because there is growth there. It's higher in one and it's lower in the other. That means there's growth there. But I still feel like with pie charts, we're looking more for comparative language rather than dynamic language of change. Okay, so the candidate has mentioned now 3 key features. And there are 2 body paragraphs. So the first bit of advice I'd give the candidate is, in your overview, mention 2 key features. And then in body paragraph 1, talk about key feature 1. In body paragraph 2, talk about key feature 2. It's that simple. Short introduction, what do the graphs say? Overview, what are the 2 main key features? Body paragraph 1, key feature 1, body paragraph 2, key feature 2. Don't know why we have 3 key features in the overview. I just cannot make sense of it. Anyway, regarding the staff members who increased in I don't know. This just feels totally. We don't need it. Employees with a PhD in science saw the most significant rise. Again, we see dynamic language starting at 12%. Comma, oh, I like this participle, very nice. This figure nearly tripled, reaching 30%. Okay, fine, nice use of this dynamic language. Still think comparative language is better, but okay. In 2010, workers qualified with, again, we get this workers to qualified with as this reduced relative clause. Workers qualified with just workers with a PhD is so much easier to read. Workers with a PhD in art followed distantly. I don't know what that means, to follow distantly. I mean, I can work it out, I can infer it, but it feels like you're trying too hard to add extra words, probably because you think it'll score extra points, and it just won't. It'll make it more difficult to read, and that's why probably not going to get the 9 in coherence and cohesion. PhD in art followed distantly with the initial figure of 2%. Workers with a PhD in art followed distantly with the initial figure of 2%, which then increased to 5%. Beyond PhD specialists, workers who maybe had secured is better, but again, with it's too much. Secured a master's. Why do we have that language? It just feels extra. Yeah. It's adding language just for the sake of adding language, which when you have a very large word count, you don't want. Workers with a master's degree in art also showed an upward trend. Again, we can see that the number in the second year is higher, but yeah, we don't see that upward trend over time. So I would say that the most obvious weakness is that you're using a lot of language talking about dynamic change over time as if it were a line graph, rather than that comparative language. The number was higher, the number was lower, there were more, they were far greater, there were significantly fewer. That's the type of language we're really looking for when we're comparing pie charts to static images, not bar charts, where now you can talk about an upward trend, or you can talk about plateau, or you can talk about remaining consistently. So it seems like you're using the language of line graphs to describe these bar charts, which is a bit weird. But I mean, it's still not a critical error, but just a bit weird. Anyway, increasing from 21%. Okay, so we get statistical data to back it up. The candidate's language is very good. The candidate's writing is generally clear, apart from a couple of, unnecessary bits of information. As for the staff members who declined in number, again, we get declined, going down, dynamic language. Employees with a first degree in science and art experienced a drop from 20% to 15% in 1990. Hold on. Employees with a first degree in science and art experienced a drop from 20% and 15% in 1990 to 11% and 2% in 2010. Okay, fine, good, this is clear. Respectively, and great use of respectively, bravo. However, workers who pursued, again, why do we have this pursued a master's degree? It's extra, it's unnecessary, it gets in the way of the readability of the text. Workers with a master's degree in science continuously, we don't know if it's continuously, we just know that in one year and in another year it was the same, but we don't know that it continuously made up a large proportion of the workforce. Having started at 29%, this figure remained the same in 2010, constituting almost a third in both years. Okay, so let's look at the band descriptors here. So, task achievement. All the requirements of the task are fully and appropriately satisfied. Extremely rare lapses in content. Maybe the response covers all the requirements of the task relevantly and sufficiently. I think the candidate has done, the candidate has explained everything, but maybe that lack of comparison and that focus on dynamic language for me might just drop it to an 8, where I feel like, to get the 9 in task achievement, I would expect to see a greater focus on comparative language rather than dynamic language. But certainly the candidate has explained all of those key features. They're skillfully selected, they're clearly presented. There are very minor points where maybe they're not. No, I think they are clearly presented. So 8 for me for this. But coherence and cohesion, the message can be followed effortlessly. No, adding those things with like to be qualified with a degree or pursuing a degree and those who secured a degree, that type of stuff kind of gets in the way of the effortless reading. So you have extra words that are just used for the sake of it. I would say that, the candidate's work is logically organized into 4 paragraphs. It's clear. There are lots of nice signposting language, nice cohesive stuff with respectively. We get that despite, which is a bit weird there. So, kind of a minor lapse in cohesion, but not a huge one. So looking again at what the 8 says, the message can be followed with ease. I would say with ease, but not effortlessly. Information and ideas are logically sequenced. Cohesion is well managed. Occasional lapses in coherence or cohesion may occur. Definitely think that misuse of despite is an example of that. So for me, band 8 there. So even though the candidate uses comparative language and candidate uses dynamic language and dynamic structures, maybe, yeah. So lexical resource, I definitely think the candidate is at band 9, probably. Are there any words in there that I don't really like? No, the vocab is great. I mean, I don't like things like follow distantly, but it's not that the language there is incorrect. It's just I find it a little bit distracting. I want simpler language that helps me to understand the graphs faster. Um, so I definitely think we can see, yeah, full use of collocation. Yeah, I think probably band 9 for vocab is appropriate. And then thinking of grammar, I'd like to see more comparative structures. And so for that reason, I don't want to see so much dynamic language. I want to see more comparative structures. A wide range of structures within the scope of the task. The scope of the task here is to make those comparisons. The candidates used dynamic language, so maybe I'm going slightly more towards the 8 than I am the 9. But the candidate does demonstrate amazing accuracy, and the candidate's language is great, absolutely great. The biggest problem that the candidate has is that the candidate is overwriting, the candidate is adding words unnecessarily, and that's getting in the way of the readability. I also think the candidate has made that mistake of using dynamic language instead of comparative language. It's not a critical mistake, but it is noticeable. And sometimes this overwriting just means that the message can't be followed absolutely effortlessly. And maybe in the task response, it's a bit weird. Sorry, the task achievement, it's a bit weird to put 3 points in the overview, but then to have 2 body paragraphs. So that's a bit odd. I don't know if that's more task achievement or coherence and cohesion, maybe a mix of both. But for me, the work is at that level of about a band 8. For me, it's this one is 8.0. So we have 8988, which is 8.25, which rounds down to an 8.0. Yeah, task achievement 8, coherence and cohesion 8, lexical resource 9, grammatical range and accuracy could be a 9, but because I don't see comparative structures, I see dynamic structures, I'm going to award 8. So for me, overall 8.0. Again, I will make the point that the candidate's language is great. The candidate does have C2 language. There's no doubt about that. I just think it's noticeable the candidate is trying too hard. The candidate's overwriting. And I think if the candidate focused on presenting the graphic, presenting the information in the graphs clearly, instead of being too paranoid about making, pursuing a degree, secured a degree, to be qualified with a degree, all of that extra stuff leaves a negative effect on the writing, not a positive one. But a nice piece of writing, really, really good language from the candidate. I wish him the best of luck. I hope he gets that 9. But for me, a little bit short here. Anyway, let me know what you think. Are my marks too harsh? Are my marks too generous? Do you agree that 8.5 is probably where the candidate is at? And also, do you agree that it's wrong and it's not a great idea to write so many words for writing task 1? Yeah, anyway, if you'd like your own free writing check, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS speaking, join one of my groups. I'm on Facebook and Telegram. Links are given in the description below. Candidates are selected at random for the free tests. If you'd prefer to pay for a test, if you want to guarantee a test and you want to pay for a test and book a test at a day at a time that's convenient for you, then check out my website expertexaminer.com. You'll see my full price list there where you'll get this level of feedback. Anyway, more videos from me coming soon, but for now, bye bye.